Hey guys, thanks so much for coming out. Let's give it up for Mark Ruffalo. Let's keep it going. Actor and producer. So let's start with the obvious stuff. How did you first come upon this story, and when did you start deciding that you wanted to make this a movie?
It came from a New York Times magazine article called by Nathaniel Rich called the lawyer that became DuPont's worst nightmare. I read it and was just blown away by the depth and breadth of this kind of corporate criminal act, and then the cover up and the fact that nobody knew about it. And it just had all the elements. I thought, it had a thriller element, a horror element, this kind of insider element, and the fact that he was a criminal defense attorney. It just seemed to me like this has got to be made into a movie. It had everything that it needed to be what I thought would be a great movie.
And tell me about building the team and getting Todd Haynes, who's obviously a fantastic director, on board to direct this.
Yeah, so we had a draft of the script. It was just very much by the numbers, kind of a whistleblower film. But I really wanted it to be something more character-driven, have a little bit more moodiness to it. Rob Ballot is such a kind of... He's not who you would think is a typical hero in movie terms, right? I mean, he's not the Hulk. I loved what Todd does, and I kept thinking of Safe, that kind of paranoia, this kind of malignant force that's outside that you never really see, but is always there and around. And I just kept imagining, all these different directors, and I just kept thinking something I wanted out of the box, something that would be surprising. And Todd, the movie that I was seeing was the movie that Todd had made,
That's great. And then when it came to the research, having Rob around, that sort of thing, what process did you go about when it came to the research? And then how did you meet Rob? And at what point in the production did you meet Rob?
Well, at first, I had a conversation with him in the beginning, because in the article, they don't really get into what happened to him at Taft Law. It was really kind of soft soaped. It was only touched on, but I felt like that was really important to the story, that conflict was really alive. So I called him, and Sarah were on conference call, and I said, "Hey man, I just got to be honest with you. I think for this to work as a movie, it's really important that I'm able to get into the conflict that you must have had at Taft Law, which I sense but is not in this article. Are you in a financial, I mean, are you like, could you tell the truth about this? And Sarah, his wife, yelled, "If you take the movie, we'll tell you everything." And I was like, cool. But that kind of frank conversation, I think, when someone from Hollywood comes knocking on your door and you're a criminal defense attorney, you're like...
It's not a usual conversation you're having week to week.
No, yeah. And there's not a lot of trust there, I think, initially. And he's a very protected guy. He's very shy and demure, and so that was our first meeting. But I think after that, and I told him what I wanted to do, there was a lot of people after this article, but we made a rapport, and the fact that I kind of went at it like that and wanted to know the truth about what was happening to him there sort of opened the door. And then literally Todd and I went, and we went and sat in his living room with Sarah and his boys, and they were like, "Dad." You?
You guys?
Oh, why you? But so we met with them, and we just started to spend a lot of time with them, and I spent a lot of time with them, and I there was a point where I wanted him to come to set, and I had to ask Todd for his permission to have Rob there, because bringing real people on set freaks out a lot of filmmakers and actors. Like, they don't want them around. It's scary because they give you notes. And like, we don't like to get notes from anybody. But after I got over, I wanted to know all the nuances of it,
Yeah, and I think he made a beautiful film, and hopefully he can show this to his kids, and they'll be like, now we know why. Now we know why you.
They were watching it. The first time he showed it to them, they were watching it, and they kept turning them and say, did that really happen? The thing about this kind of journey for somebody is you really take it alone, just because it's so alien to people. It's so big. It's so hard to describe that most of the people in his life really didn't know what he was doing, and they just thought he was a ghost.
Yeah, and when it came to the point where you're making this film, you're meeting with him, what other research came about? I'm sure people were reaching out to you, obviously the farmer affected. Who else did you... It must have been difficult to siphon, what storylines you want to actually be a part of and be able to, make a complete film with. So how did you go about that process?
So, it was really important to all of us that we really brought this community into the film and centered on their experience and then honored them and really, as much as we could, flesh out who they were. And so we were working with them from the beginning, and they were with us throughout. And of course, they're in the movie. And, that scene with Bucky Bailey, that was our last scene of the last day of shooting. And when we wrapped that scene, I looked around and the entire crew was crying, because it was the reality of what we were doing and why we were doing it just finally settled with everyone. I mean, you're making a movie. Everyone's running around like a chicken with their head cut off. You're freezing your ass off. You're like tired. You're working 16-hour days. You're just grinding it. But just to have that guy standing there, you probably experienced it yourself. It's like so crystalline what this is, how the reality of it is, how it really affects people.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about that a little bit before, the reality of the moments, and actually allowing the audience to sit with some of these things that he went through, going through the discovery, getting that truckload of discovery, and then sitting there with his wife. And I mean, when you were going through his story and talking to him, what moments did you, make a note in your head, we need to show this. We need to show this in a true and authentic way?
Well, as an actor, you want to hit the scenes, man. You want to be passionate and you want to like shine. But that's not this guy. He didn't do that. And
kick down the door. DuPont.
No.
What are you guys doing in here?
No. So the deposition scene when he deposes Charles Holliday, who's the CEO of DuPont, right? I thought, okay, this is it. I'm going to chew his ass. This is my moment to be just so self-righteous and to like get justice. So I asked Rob, I was like, is that what you're doing? He's like, okay, what are you doing? And he says, I just felt that if I could show him the material, if I could show him what the company had been doing, if I could lay it out to him in the clearest way, that he'll do the right thing. And it's a totally different way to play that scene, and it's so much better to play it that way.
And it's so much more heroic, to go that way.
Yeah.
let's talk about the cast. Obviously, let's talk about first Sarah Anne Hathaway. Was she your first thought when it came to this process, the casting process?
To be honest, no. But Todd was like, "This is our Sarah," and I was like, "You're the guy." But she was so amazing, and immediately, I never met her before, but immediately, upon meeting her, we were in, and I was telling him a little story. We had done a rehearsal, and I was like shitting my pants. I was like, I can't do this part. I was with her. I was like, I was having a total breakdown, and it was like a week before we were shooting. I'm like, I can't do it. I can't find the character. I don't know what I'm doing. I can't find his voice. I can't find his physicalization. I'm totally lost. And she's like, what are you talking about? And it was literally the conversation that Sarah has with Rob, and she picked me up and she brushed me off and she sent me on my way. And after that we were in.
What
kind of incredible.
She's so great in this. And some of the scenes, when you're telling her about what you're going through, I mean, how long did it take to film that scene?
I mean, we only did like 2 takes of that. I mean, because it's, it was like 10 pages of dialogue. Yeah. And we'd been working it's like an end of a 16-hour day. And we were pretty wrung out. But yeah, she sat there and, she gave me it all for that thing.
And Bill Camp as the farmer.
Amazing.
I mean, he's so fantastic. Right,
Bill
guys?
Camp.
I mean, yeah. He just moves you so much. You really feel the anguish. And the thing is, I grew up working summers on a dairy farm. I know, some people don't understand, like, the connection with her. Like, you can understand what this farmer's going through what he's portraying as that character.
He loved those animals. Yeah. And all that video footage that you see was actually Wilbur Tennant's. He shot that. That was from his farm. And, Bill captures him beautifully. Yeah. And then Tim Robbins, of course, with his speech. He gets the speech.
Yeah. But I love
he gets an applause during the movie.
You're there sitting, like nodding.
Yeah.
I'm the guy.
I'm in this.
But I love the way that they shot that, way that Todd shot that, just sitting there in that documentarian feel. I mean, I love documentaries, and I know there's some documentaries that have been about this crisis, but I think the way that you guys are able to portray what's going on in those rooms in a way that we will never see, and the authenticity you brought to those moments, and the way that you shot it in a documentary style, were you guys cognizant of that? Were you all there, all playing together during those like courtroom scenes and boardroom?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is, first of all, we had the most amazing regional actors. A lot of those people are from Cincinnati or just around that region, and they're amazing. And it's so nice to see these fresh faces and characters. And but we were playing those scenes. Those are like 6, 7, 8-page scenes, and we were just playing them straight through. And everyone was just in the pocket on them all. Todd really kind of handed it to us, set it up. A lot of it is, pretty wide. He loves seeing people in space and alone a lot, and with a lot of wasted frame, big wide shots, which I think are really effective for this.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, the tone of it, obviously Todd has his own style, but the way this thing reads, and obviously it's a true story, and that's what makes it all the more horrifying. But it really plays like a horror film. I know you guys probably felt that too. I mean, there's moments you want to look away because you can't believe what these people went through. So did you feel that on the set? Did you guys feel like, okay, did you guys go out there and make a fictional film, a horror film? I mean, what elements did you bring, and were you aware of the tone that was coming out, and was that always the end game?
Well, you know, one of the first thing once I started to get interested in optioning the material, I was given a link that showed that videotape that Wilbur Tennant had shot. He shot like 6 hours of that stuff, and I went through that, and I was like, this is Invasion of the Body Snatchers. This is a fucking full blown horror. And I started at the very beginning to see the movie in those terms. And so when I first talked to Todd, we were talking about, you know, the classic whistleblower films, which he loves. But I was also like, you know, I really think we could do a sleight of hand here and have this be as much a kind of paranoid horror, have that kind of element in it. And he really liked that idea, and that those scenes really happened. The helicopter scene happened, you know, the scene when Rob, you know, when you're going against someone like DuPont and you see what they're willing to do and capable of doing, like, you know, offing one dude is not like something that's completely out of, you know, out of the blue. Yeah. And so he really did think in that basement that when he turned that key, his car might explode, you know?
And we talked about speaking with Rob, and then you mentioned the speakerphone and having Sarah there as well. What did she give you about Rob that you took away?
You know, it took me a long time to crack Rob, to get into him, because first of all, he doesn't like to talk about himself. He doesn't like to have the focus on him. Sometimes I don't even know that he actually knows how to do that. And that was what Sarah would say. She's like, "Oh, Rob, he'll never get anything out of him." But, you know, I wouldn't let go with him. Yeah. And, I mean, I had to know what made him tick. And so, it took a long time to get to know him, to have him, trust me.
Yeah. You know, when it comes to a film like this, obviously there's a lot of films out there that you could do, but you chose to do this one. You chose to tell this story, you know, working with companies like Participant Media, who have been so great about their action campaigns and working on humanitarian efforts. Did you have sort of, you know, this is, you know, you can go to the trailer, anything on YouTube, and you can see people just like, I'm so glad this story is continuing to be told and not just being lost in the media. So what kind of action campaigns have you developed around the film? What sort of things did you see before this even started that you're happy to have in action now?
So, I mean, one of the great things is working with Participant, and we started to get into it a little bit with Spotlight, was their advocacy campaign. I'm an activist, and I've been an environmental activist, you know, a social justice activist, a peace act. I've been an activist for a long time, and I was looking for material that fit that. But you still have to make a great movie. You can't just set out to make something that's, you know,
in a room in a vacuum. Yeah, it needs to be out there.
And has to be. And so so this advocacy campaign, fightforeverchemicals.com, is as cool and as informative as anything I think they've ever done. We were just on a town hall call the other day with all these communities. There were like 400 people that joined this call, and the amount in one testimony after another of people's husbands dying from cancer after 30 years in the fire department, you know, living across the street from a PFOA dump in some idyllic place in North Carolina, and you know, developing these crazy rare cancers. One story after the next of people that are living with this, and it's serious. And there's this like collective, they've been left out of the American dream. Like the system has turned their back on them. This chemical isn't even regulated after everything we know about it. And they're in the middle of right now of doing the NDAA, the National Defense Appropriation Act. It's like the budget for the national defense. And we're trying to get them to do some sort of regulation here. And it is literally like pulling teeth. I mean, to get any movement on this chemical. And they don't want to make DuPont and 3M pay for the fucking stuff. Their biggest concern is making 3M and DuPont have to pay. Both sides of the aisle. And you understand why we don't know about this. Because this system is rigged, you know? And we're stuck in this crazy vicious circle of being made sick. There's a study coming out next week by EWG. There's 100 million people that have this in their water. It's here in New York City. It's up and down the eastern seaboard. This problem is huge. And we're getting sick. They're letting us get sick, and then we have to pay a fortune to make ourselves better. And the politicians are taking it from both sides, both from this industry and the healthcare industry, and we are just stuck in this vicious circle. And so this advocacy campaign, sorry.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's what we want to hear.
I'm outraged. It makes me
You're
so
passionate.
angry.
I love that. Absolutely. We all love that.
But, there's a lot we can do. And there's a 2020 election. And there's maybe one person in that lineup who will fight all these bastards. Yeah. So
I love that. And then having, a company like Focus Features come around and have you guys do these campaigns. And I think actually as part of the promotion or included with having this film come out, you went to the Hill. And what was that experience like and testified in front of the Hill?
Yeah, so I was invited to come and testify on Capitol Hill week before last. And it was all, bunch of Democrats on this side and like 3 Republicans showed up. And their biggest concern was not that their constituents have been poisoned, not that people were dying of cancer, not that this company knew about it and allowed it to go ahead. And their biggest concern is, what the fuck is an actor doing here talking to us? And it was heartbreaking because, I want to believe that we all want clean water, wherever we sit on our political beliefs, And that was their big talking point. That and we shouldn't make these companies pay. That was their only concern.
Well, a lot of people want to talk to them about this. So I think if we all share our voices, we all get heard, shared on social media, follow the campaigns, where can people direct their attention? And is there a website for the
FightForeverChemicals.com? That'll tell you like what pans you can buy. I know probably a lot of you are gonna run home and start throwing
Christmas presents,
pans out.
You're saving their lives.
That tells you like all the products that have this stuff in it. I mean, it goes up and down. There's cosmetics. There's so many products that have this stuff in it, and so there's a part of the website is like what doesn't have it in it. Just changing our what we buy. The way we are as consumers will make these people start to change. That's one way of doing it. But then there's legislative actions you could take on there. Right now, if you want, like I just tweeted to Nancy Pelosi tonight to like get on this and try
RT
to
RT that.
Yeah. so I mean, yeah, I'm talking about it constantly. But FightForeverChemicals.com, and then Rob Bilott, my hero, just got on Twitter a couple days ago.
Yeah, follow him.
So follow him and give him some love. And his book, his new book, Exposure,
yes.
like really opens this up in the most profound way, and is beautifully written. He's a beautiful prose writer.
What I love about the Angelica is everyone's so polite. They actually listen. They stick around to talk about these films. Send people here. I know you guys haven't taken any photos or anything like that, but if you want to take a photo right now of Dark Waters right now, I think with here, Mark here, you can point up to it and tag the campaign and get all your friends to talk about that. We'll just point to Dark Waters and tag, Stop Forever Chemicals, right?
Fight Forever Chemicals.
Fight Forever Chemicals.
Does that look weird?
We're good. Yeah, thanks so much, guys. I had that moment. Thanks so much, guys. Dark Waters. Tell your friends.
Really appreciate you being here. Bye.